founding dean, Professor Allison.
Xie Feng, you come to paint the illusion of a prosperous China, but your hands are painted with blood. You robbed the Hong Kongers of their most fundamental freedoms and devastated their democracy. Now, in my country, Taiwan, you sought to do the same. China, where our people die! 80% of Tibetan children are forced into colonial boarding schools that are aimed to destroy our Tibetan people's existence. Shame on Xie Feng! Shame on Xie Feng! You million Uyghurs are locked in concentration camps. They are subject to rape, torture, forced organ harvesting, sterilization. Shame on Xie Feng!
But we would like to give our guests the opportunity to make their own views known.
You have blood on your hands! You have blood on your hands! Guilty of genocide! Guilty of genocide! Guilty of genocide! Guilty of genocide! Shame on Xie Feng! Shame on Xie Feng!
Thank you,
Shame
everyone, for your
on
attention.
Xie Feng!
Founding the People's Republic of China.
Free Tibet! Free Tibet! How can you be here when the Chinese government is in direct contravention of every human rights law in the world? You are a representative of a government that advocates for genocide. The genocide of the Tibetan people, of the Uyghur people, the occupation of Hong Kong. The occupation of Hong Kong. You are a travesty. You do not deserve to be here. This is a free country. You cannot protect your transnational oppression on this country, in this continent. You are ashamed of the shame of the institution. Shame on you, shame on you.
Let me just remind everyone.
This video has gone viral online and topped the headlines of major news media. On April 20th, Harvard Kennedy School's Greater China Society hosted the 2024 China Forum, inviting the Chinese ambassador Xie Feng to the US to speak. During the event, 2 women and 1 man in the audience stood up, holding up banners accusing the CCP of lying, and shouting slogans calling attention to human rights issues in Tibet, Xinjiang, and freedom and democracy in Hong Kong, causing considerable embarrassment for Xie Feng. The video shows the first protester, a Taiwanese female student, being violently dragged away by a young Chinese man. After this man and security personnel outside removed the female student, the other 2 protesters were not subject to such rough treatment. Before 8 a.m., protesters braved heavy rain and gradually gathered outside Harvard Kennedy School to demonstrate against CCP officials and supporters, holding umbrellas and wearing raincoats. They chanted slogans such as Free Hong Kong, Free Tibet, and Shame Xi Jinping.
We are here to protest about the conditions in China, the way they treat people, the persecution of so many different groups, the Falun Gong, the Uyghurs, the Tibetans, and underground Christians. We like to protest wherever you go. So this time he's in Boston, so we're here to protest, to let him know, send him a message, and also to bring awareness to the public.
CCP officials met with protesters wherever they go, with dictators being treated like rats crossing the street. The male student who forcibly pulled away the protesting female student, Wu Tinghua, sparked online attention. This man has now been exposed with a surprising background, reportedly being the great-grandson of Mao Zedong. The Chinese influencer in America, Prince Shen, posted on the X platform on April 21st, pointing out that the co-chairman of the Chinese Students and Scholars Association, Zhou Hongji, a Beijing nationalist studying in international political economy, claims to be a world citizen promoting cross-cultural exchanges. In reality, he actively narrates China's stories, merely acting as a CCP enforcer. Born on August 24, 2001, he owns at least 5 properties in China, 4 in Beijing, and 1 in the center of Harbin Heilongjiang province. The locations of the Beijing properties are extremely valuable. His mother, Liu Yan, is a cadre at the CCP Central Organization Department, and his father, Zhou Jiaming, currently serves as a standing committee member and deputy head of organization in Sanya, Hainan province, and is also the president of Sanya Administrative College. This explains some of Zhou Hongji's aggressive behavior and he also titles himself as the founder and co-chairman of the World Development Forum at Harvard. On April 23rd, the Chinese-Canadian author Sheng Xue said that in normal circumstances, protests are handled by security or police arranged by the event organizers. But at the scene, it was a Chinese student who took action. He has a self-created organizational title and used well-trained movements to effectively drag the protester out. This person reacts quickly, and it's very likely that he will become the next generation of a wolf warrior, cultivated by the CCP. Though it's also likely he won't have a chance anymore, as I don't think the CCP will last that long. Shang Xue said that CCP high officials always encountered protests in democratic countries. The Harvard incident particularly drew strong public opinion because the Harvard Kennedy School is an academic institution, and out of all people, they decided to include the Chinese ambassador to the US as a guest speaker. She said Xie Feng is a spokesperson for an authoritarian state, a mouthpiece for the CCP. So the role played by the Kennedy School in this event is quite disgraceful. The Harvard Kennedy School has a large number of Chinese students and multiple cooperation projects with the CCP regime, and for years it has helped Beijing train officials, often called the second party school of the CCP. Following the Harvard protest, Xie Feng made an X post on April 22nd, repeating the official CCP rhetoric about its so-called whole process democracy, claiming that the CCP is a defender of democracy, and stated that a survey by the Harvard Kennedy School shows that over 90% of Chinese people are satisfied with the Chinese government. Shang Xue remarked that Xie Feng must praise the CCP-style democracy because party leader Xi Jinping cannot tolerate anyone expressing views different from his own. So Xie Feng can only serve as a mouthpiece for CCP tyranny. She said, the Kennedy School claiming that the satisfaction level with the CCP can reach over 90% is laughed at by many people. The CCP is a one-party dictatorship with no competitive elections in form or content. Plus, there is censorship and the media is all loyal to the party. All of which indicate Xie Feng is lying. But he lied boldly right in the academic halls of the United States. Harvard University should reflect on this. As the crimes of the CCP become increasingly recognized, similar protests will surely become more frequent. People from a regime guilty of crimes against humanity should be driven out. They should not be allowed to spread lies around the world. On April 22nd, two of the protesters were interviewees by Voice of America.
It's unacceptable for Harvard to invite somebody who represents a genocidal government, who is personally responsible for overseeing, everything that happened in Hong Kong, and to give him a platform that is really undeserved. I think one of the benefits of the way in which we protested and that we disrupted his event was that we took away that platform pretty successfully.
Xie Feng represents and advocates for a government that commits genocide so blatantly, so overtly, without any impunity, really, and how that's not okay. It's very contradictory to the values that Harvard supposedly stands on, and just to tell him that he's not welcome here.
Associate Professor Feng Chong-yi from the University of Technology in Sydney said that following this incident, students from other schools are sure to emulate this form of protest. It can be adopted by students from Hong Kong, Taiwan, as well as Tibetan and Uyghur students. Feng Chong-yi noted that such actions do not require many people. Individuals can carry them out on their own. He emphasized that Chinese officials constantly encounter such embarrassing incidents, and under Xi Jinping's regime, which is met with containment and caution by the democratic world, they continue to show no remorse. He said they will not care unless there is a substantial cost. The China Human Rights Accountability Center, CHRAC, mentioned that it would investigate whether Zhou Hongji is involved in any potential criminal activities. If evidence of such crimes is found, it will be provided to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The CHRAC founder, Lin Shengliang, on April 23rd, described this as an extension of the CCP's tyranny and a form of transnational repression. Lin Shengliang expressed admiration for the courage of individuals like Wu Tinghua, who stood up to protest in front of Xie Feng. He mentioned that fear can be contagious, but so can courage. Therefore, he believes it is possible that Chinese international students will be seen protesting against Chinese diplomats abroad in the future, though he acknowledges the current concerns of these students. Lin Shengliang said, "So why do Chinese international students lack courage? As long as their families remain in China, they become hostages to the CCP, which is adept to exploiting this situation. Part of this is also due to their own fears and self-censorship, but the real threat of their families also exists." Lin Shengliang, a Chinese dissident residing in the Netherlands, initiated the CCP villains list at the end of 2022, inviting volunteers to collect wrongdoings of CCP officials in China. The team transformed the CCP villains list into the China Human Rights Accountability Center, aiming to promote transparency in human rights abuses cases and to investigate and monitor the Chinese government's transnational repression activities. This time, the team quickly added Zhou Hongji, a student at Harvard University, to the villains list as entry number 400 for forcibly removing a protester against the Chinese ambassador to the US during his study at Harvard University involving in transnational repressive activities. On April 25, 2024, Xiaolei Wu, a Chinese international student at Berklee College of Music, was sentenced in Boston to 9 months in prison and 3 years of supervised release, followed by deportation for threatening and harassing fellow students who support democracy. On January 25th, the jury found Xiaolei Wu guilty of cyberstalking and interstate transmission of threatening communications. The verdict was below the prosecution's recommendation of 33 months in prison and 3 years of supervised release, and above the defense attorney's request for release followed by self-deportation. On April 24th, federal judge Dennis Casper delivered the verdict against Xiaolei Wu, who is scheduled to report to prison on June 7th. Upon completing his sentence, he will be deported from the United States unless he receives special permissions from the Department of Homeland Security. Judge Casper stated that although Wu's crimes occur over just 2 days, their intent was to prevent victims from voicing their support for democracy. Additionally, Wu harassed the victims and encouraged others to do the same. Wu came to the US on a student visa and his passport was confiscated after his arrest. The judge noted that the sentencing took into account Wu's actions and the importance of the judgment in protecting more Chinese students and citizens in the US from intimidation. In October 2022, a Chinese student named Zoe posted flyers near her school with messages like "Stand with the Chinese people," "We want freedom," "We want democracy." Wu, upon learning of this, repeatedly threatened her online. On October 22, 2022, Wu threatened in a WeChat group to chop off Zoe's hands and to report her so-called reactionary posters to the CCP. Some group members echoed his threats, but others called for handling the matter privately. Zoe stated that these comments terrified her and made her worry for her family in China, causing her sleepless nights. Later, Zoe received an email from Wu intending to report her to Chinese public security, which included her school email and residential address. Zoe felt Wu was continuing to harass her and encouraging others to join. She reported this to her school, requesting action. The school subsequently issued a no-contact order, requiring both parties not to contact each other during the school's investigation. Wu was later suspended from school for a year. Zoe also stated during her evidence that she felt so threatened by Wu that she had to move houses. At the sentencing hearing on April 24th, the prosecutor stated that Wu's actions were severe, weaponizing the authoritarian nature of the Chinese government to harass and threaten the victim. The prosecutor noted that Chinese authorities had repeatedly harassed Zoe's father in China, confirming her fears. According to Zoe, in March 2023, a National People's Congress representative told her father that Zoe was responsible for Xiaolei Wu's arrest. After this official's visit, her father urged her to withdraw the lawsuit. He believed if she continued her involvement in the case, it could place him in jeopardy. The prosecutor urged that although Wu's specific actions might not have been directed by Chinese authorities, he still placed himself as part of PRC's network of censorship and repression, which extends deeply in the US and the relationships between Chinese Americans and their families on the mainland. The prosecutor emphasized that Wu clearly lacked remorse and suggested that the sentence needed to serve as a strong message of general deterrence. On the day he was convicted in January, Wu appeared unconcerned about the verdict, flipping off reporters as he left the courthouse. The prosecutor stated that there were several valid reasons for requesting a 33-month sentence for Wu. First, his words themselves were violent, involving death threats and even mentions of chopping hands. The prosecutor said that these were not mere colloquialism, but were directly calculated to cause fear in the victim. Secondly, the defendant's threats and harassment of Zoe were not merely due to her democratic views and opinions about China. Wu wanted to silence her, ensuring that others like Zoe were afraid to speak out. Thirdly, as part of the action to keep Ms. Zoe silent, Wu threatened to report her actions to the Chinese government. The prosecution stated that the defendant not only issued threats, but also brought the CCP government's threats directly to the victim's attention. This again, he did to accomplish his main goal, to make her so afraid that she would never again speak out against the PRC government. The prosecution noted that because of this case and the defendant's actions, Zoe feels she cannot safely return to China. Xiaolei Wu's defense attorney, Michael Tomposki, argued that his client should not face harsher penalties simply because he did not plead guilty proactively. Tomposki portrayed Wu as a young jazz enthusiast who had worked hard to get into his dream school, only to have his future ruined by 2 days of immature behavior. The lawyer attempted to frame the issue as related to a cultural clash between Wu's upbringing in highly protected communist China and the democratic norms of the United States. Xiaolei Wu himself read a statement in court and apologized multiple times. "Every day I am filled with regret," he said. "I must take responsibility and learn from what I have done. The first step is to say, I'm sorry." Pro-democracy leader Xie Feng spoke about such threats abroad as being all too common, causing many people to live in fear. On the other hand, the long-standing indulgence of wrongdoers and indifference to victims in foreign societies has made the extreme nationalists increasingly arrogant. Americans have often struggled to understand the comprehensive repression the Chinese people endure, thus allowing CCP forces to extend their persecutory actions overseas. However, in this case, the jury's guilty verdict is significant. Xie Feng said, "I hope that those who do evil will take this as a warning, and it will serve as a caution to the CCP's agents abroad in the future." He noted that especially new immigrants and international students need to understand the protections for free speech in the US, and should not silence others as the CCP does. Serving as a lackey for the Chinese Communist Party will eventually lead to severe punishment in a land of democracy and freedom.